lecturer in higher education at the University of Surrey. But I worked for several years at NU. I know some of you there. So hello to the people that I used to know. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, I'm currently at Surrey, where my work is partly teaching. I teach on a course called the PG Cert, which effectively leads to a fellowship of the AGA, and is a course that all new lecturers and academics at Surrey have to take. And I do research into skills development, disruptive pedagogies, and university community interaction, co-creation, that sort of thing. Um, Today, I'm going to talk then about a technique, a strategy for skills generation, and a way in an educational context for students to apply theory to practice, which is playful mapping. So I'll just give you a little bit of background, some reasons why it might be worth using or trying out, and then some examples, because it has very broad application. And then we just have a bit of a chat at the end. I think I've got half an hour. I don't intend to talk for that long, so hopefully we can have a bit of a discussion. To try and make it a little bit interactive, because I don't like the idea of just me talking, if you follow this QR code, it will take you to a Jamboard. On there, you'll see there's a place to put some questions. And on the second page of the Jamboard is an example of a map. Here's one I prepared earlier, which I'm very happy for you to play around with. There's a context and a map, and everyone has editing rights, so please feel free to play around. And if you have any questions or comments, you can leave it on the other sheet. You can add sheets. I don't mind. I'm just trying to make it a little bit interactive. So just thinking about the context and where we are, and I suppose the sort of the situation in which this particular event finds itself, thinking about post-COVID learning and teaching. There are a number of things in the UK. I suppose I'm in the UK at the moment, so I'm thinking about that context. We've got some headlines here. So this one from the BBC: pupils face lost decade in education after COVID. So there's very much a sense that there's a gap between, or there's a difference between the education that students who were, experiencing school before COVID had, compared to what they have now, or those people who had it during the pandemic. So then on top of that, there's another headline here from just the other day. I mean, we have an election coming up in the UK quite soon, thankfully. And one of the issues coming out of that is this idea of national service. And there's a commentary here from The Guardian with some chap saying schools don't prepare young people for life. National service could change that. So alluding to what he's alluding to there is this idea of skills development, that, only through joining the army or, I don't know, working for the NHS on the weekend would you develop these skills. And that seems a bit nonsensical to me. I mean, I agree that there are problems with schools, but surely the solution then is to fix schools. It's not to introduce national service. But anyway, moving on, there's another headline here from The Guardian, where this is a report just from the other day, where university students are saying that they see little point in attending. And so engagement has come up a few times today already. And I suppose the thought for me there is, well, is engagement a problem as a result of online teaching, emergency online teaching during the pandemic? Or is it maybe just something that's always been there and the pandemic has kind of shone a light on poor practice, and we've returned to it and nothing has changed? So, I mean, one of the people interviewed in that research actually said, I see no point in going to lectures because they don't develop any skills. I don't get anything out of them. And then the last image here is from the World Economic Forum from last year. And they sort of every year they put out this thing about, what are the top skills, and the point they're making there is that they do change slightly, but some of these transferable ones seem to endure. And that's analysis, critical thinking, communication skills, curiosity, that sort of thing. Creativity is one that's come in the last few years as well. And so in education, I suppose what we should be doing at the very least is creating the opportunity for students to develop these skills in the way that we teach and, the learning environments that we create, whether they be online or face to face. And my feeling is that we don't do that very well, either online or face to face. So thinking about the technique I'll be talking about today, which is participatory mapping. Basically, it's a collaborative process where you engage individuals or groups to use their knowledge. And so in this sense, you're harnessing the knowledge of the communities that you're working with, and in, I suppose, in educational context, that would be students, to co-create a context, a map. And this process develops a sense of ownership and belonging, sorts of, again, these sort of things that we've been teasing out today as well, this idea of belonging. And it's an opportunity for students to contribute their ideas in an educational context, which, as I said, is motivating. So effectively, the people engaged in the activity create the map, and it could be anything. So unpacking a little bit of the theory behind it, it sits in this idea of participatory action research, where we're using participants' expertise, their knowledge, their context, what they're interested in. Which then feeds into self-determination theory, which is a theory of motivation, which says that basically we're motivated to do things. We're motivated to engage when we have a sense of control or autonomy, when we feel that we're good at something, or we feel confident doing it, and when we are doing that within a context of belonging or relating to other people. And the third element is this theory of play, which a lot of my research after I had left NU was into applications of play. So I'll just talk about that a little bit, I suppose, because I know a little bit about it. To set this in context as well, it's not the same as gamification. I'm not a fan really of gamification, although I don't mind it particularly. It's not something that I like very much. Which is quizzes and turning putting knobs on something. But play is much more to do with this idea of design, or creating learning environments characterized by some of these things I have on the slide here: autonomy, agency, curiosity, collaboration, experimentation. And as a species, we're very good at play, very, very good at it, and we're also very, very good at learning. I suppose I would argue that what we're not very good at is teaching. So play, then, a core sort of essential human characteristic. And so some of the bits or characteristics of a playful environment, you don't have to have all of these things in something for it to be playful, but some of them, that iterative, that you can have multiple goes at something. So if you think of it in the context of a video game, if you die, you just start again, it doesn't matter. And that feeds into this idea of it being low risk, low stakes. So unlike exams, which are very high risk and high stakes, a playful activity is one which is low risk. It doesn't really carry very much. Social and collaborative, imaginative, universal, and fun. I mean, and there are different types of fun, and we can unpack this. I mean, there's a lot that's been written about it, and I would recommend having a look. But yeah, if you incorporate some of these elements, then you could make the case that what you're doing is playful. So the cell, as it were, why engage in the activity of mapping? Why do it? I would argue is that it creates a very good opportunity to develop skills, and some of the skills that are neglected, particularly in online teaching, but also in face-to-face teaching as well. And those are problem solving, communication, creativity, critical thinking, teamwork. And all of these things are things which the World Economic Forum have said are the key skills that we're supposed to be developing. But what happened with the pandemic, with the emergency transition to online teaching, was out of necessity. Most of the focus was on content. Things, lectures were put online, for example, or materials put online, and then the quiz was created. So it was very much to do with ticking the box of, have I presented this information to students? And that also exists in face-to-face, and that's a very common trend in education in general. I think the sense of like, I have to cover the syllabus, I have to cover this material, and it doesn't matter whether the students are learning it. The important thing is that I am teaching it, and then there'll be an exam, and some people will pass and some people will fail, but I will have done my job as a teacher. And so trying to get rid of that, online or face-to-face, I think this is a strategy that can be used. So does anyone recognize what this is a picture of? I can't hear anyone from the room. Do you recognize it? Yeah, it's SimCity, absolutely. So the activity I'm talking about, this is a very early version of SimCity. The activity I'm talking about is a bit like doing SimCity, where you design an environment and you play around with it. So what does it look like? Map could look like that. It can be done face-to-face or online. It can last for an hour or it can last for months. And I'm just going to go through a few examples now. So in the picture on this slide, for example, this is an event that we did at Coventry a couple of years ago, where we brought in people from the local community and academics to talk about issues. And one of the things that featured in there was a game that some colleagues of mine created called Homeless Monopoly, which was a way of raising awareness about homelessness. And so, you know, lots of good stuff can come out of this, and sort of quite a practical community university engagement element. That was one example. This example is from a session I did as part of CPD. So we have a CPD program at Surrey, as I'm sure you do it at NU. And so when I ran this, it was a 1.5 hour session online. And what that allowed me to do was to actually run through the activity in that time. So what we did was we said, create a context. And I said, this was actually the slide that I had in the session. You know, it could be a university, a farmer school, or a company. So people came up with the context and then they drew the map. So the first part of that session was the group of academics in my session, basically drawing a map together. And what they decided to come up with, for whatever reason, I don't know why, was a biscuit factory. Fair enough. So their context was a biscuit factory. They spent 20 minutes drawing this biscuit factory, you know, adding bits to it. Then, and this is the bit where the theory comes in. So if you think this first bit, sorry to go back, is about an opportunity for the people who are engaging in the activity to apply their knowledge, because whatever they draw is from their experience. So they're creating it and they're working together, communicating. I don't think anyone in that room had ever worked in a biscuit factory, but you know, I was expecting, because there were a lot of people from the vet school, I was expecting a farm, for example, or a university, because everyone worked at a university, but that's not what they came up with. So the first bit then is about applying your own experience, your knowledge, creating a context that you own. Then the second bit is the opportunity to apply theory. And this is why, as a sort of a technique, it can be used in academic pursuits in any real subject area. So what you do is you introduce a problem which has an immediate impact on the context. So the example here, if you had a dairy farm, the new circumstance could be an outbreak of foot and mouth disease. And then what happens after this, the discussion, the debate becomes, well, how do you apply theory to solve that problem? What could you do to resolve or meet the new challenges? So the context of the biscuit factory, the problem that they decided was a mouse infestation. So this is part of the map that some very esteemed colleagues of mine at the University of Surrey drew, where they came up with a variety of solutions to the mouse infestation in their biscuit factory. But also that discussion then touched on a number of different subjects. It touched on policy, on regulation. It touched on the environment, sustainability. Did we want to kill the mice or just keep the mice out? It touched on marketing. How do you spin your response to having a mouse infestation in such a way that your customers are happy to eat your biscuits going forward? So that was a multidisciplinary group of people who were then applying their knowledge to a solution in a sort of fun, low-risk, iterative way. And the conversation went on for 45 minutes, and then it was quite nice. Another example where I've used it in a different context and in a completely different way. I was working on a project after leaving NU in Vietnam. And the context we were working with there was teaching STEM in a remote part of Vietnam called Hoa Binh, which is in the north of Vietnam. And so the government had mandated that people in Vietnam were supposed to get better at STEM, but of course there was no money for that, especially in remote areas. So how can you create context or what learning environments for people to learn and teach STEM subjects with a very frugal, low budget? And a sort of another issue was promotion of the minority community, the Mahon community, which is actually the largest minority in Vietnam, but was the minority in that area. And so what we did was we created a context where we co-created a solution with kids at the local school, teachers at the Teacher Trainings College, the university in Hanoi, our university, which was Coventry at the time, members of the community, and a French NGO. And in order to get the input from the children, because these were primary school children, we engaged in mapping. So there are some examples here in the background. You can see the pictures that the kids drew. And what we were asking them to do was to design their perfect playground. So they had a sense of ownership and engagement in this activity, in this practice. And then from those images and the discussion with the kids and then working with the community, we designed the playground. And you can sort of see in the background of the previous slide, sorry, these are some of the things in that playground, made from sort of recycled tires and wood. And there was also a little garden of herbs, which was a focus for the sort of Hmong medicinal techniques. And it was all nice, co-created. And what happened after that was we worked with teachers at the Teacher Training School to co-design activities where they could teach STEM through using the playground. So physics using the swings, biology using the Hmong herb garden, that sort of thing. In my own context right now, I'm teaching on the postgraduate certificate in teaching and learning, which turns into basically students who complete that course get a fellowship of the Higher Education Academy, which is equivalent to a teaching qualification in higher education in the UK. So it's 3 semesters, and all new lecturers, academics at Surrey have to take this course. So we have quite a big cohort, between 60 and 100 people each year coming through. And my tutorials are conducted all online, and I use an online whiteboard. So Miro is the one that I use, or Miro, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. But contained here is the entire course, and this one began in October 2023, and it's every tutorial is contained on this one whiteboard. So we engage with it. Each week we come up with problems, they're mapped onto the whiteboard, we discuss it, and then the whiteboard sits there, and it has sat there since October, and it will sit there till the end of the course, containing all the ideas, links, images, arguments, discussions, a record of the whole thing mapped out. Which is a lovely resource, because it means that, in week 12, we can go back to what was covered in week 2 if it was interesting, link back to it, revisit some of these ideas. And what it does is it does create a little bit of community amongst those learners. It's funny when we talked about engagement, and a lot of stuff that comes out of the people that I work with now is the same sense of you have to explain things carefully to students. You have to create, how do you motivate them? How do you engage them? And my students now are academics. These are motivated people. And I think that all students are. It's just a question of creating an environment where you allow that to come out. And so this seems to work for the community of learners that I'm working with. And yeah, it's a nice thing. Very simple, very easy. And it's communicative, collaborative, online. So that's all I wanted to say, really. And that's, I think, about 20 minutes. So we have got time for some discussion. If you have any questions, here's a link to that thing again. I'm going to stop sharing and hopefully field some questions. But just before, a shameless pimp of my new book, which is the link on the left there. And on the right is a link to a paper that I co-authored on this technique on playful mapping. So please do have a follow and have a read. Citations very welcome, of course, at your own discretion.